I wanted to hop on here for a few minutes to talk about the MKBHD fervor on the internet over his last two reviews of these AI boxes, these AI assistants, the Humane Pin and now the Rabbit AI assistant, and how so many people are being negative about his reviews and saying he shouldn't be doing these things. And while we have our differences, not personally, I don't know, but while I disagree with a lot of his opinions, and there was a time when I was upset about one of his reviews because I thought his just influence and picking a certain theme, I think, negatively impacted customers. We'll talk about that as well in a moment. Here, he's absolutely in the right. We have to, as reviewers, be able to deliver reviews like he has on his last two videos without receiving this kind of backlash. Or we could receive the backlash, but it shouldn't mean anything. That's for sure. And everybody who's complaining is wrong, and we're going to kind of go over that. So the Pixel 6a, I've talked about this. I did take issue with his review of the Pixel 6a, choosing to kind of focus in on the theme of it not having 60 hertz, because what happened was his giant influence trickled down to all these other reviewers and people looking at the device. And you got everybody parroting that 60 hertz thing. You had consumers doing it in the comment section. It was awful. It was just an awful, awful thing, because I think a lot of people passed on that device because of it. But not only that, I think it influenced Google. Now, whether they were going in that direction or already or not, I don't know. But it didn't help, because Google then took a device that was the Pixel 6a, and that was an excellent direction, just kind of giving you a bare bones, fantastic smartphone experience, and moved it away from that. And then you got the price increase on the Pixel 7a. But, of course, it had some of those features that everybody was complaining about. It had the 90 hertz, had the wireless charge. Things that, the Pixel 6a didn't have, but certainly weren't negatives of the device, especially at that price point. So I did take issue in his review on the Pixel 6a, because I do think that was an instance where his massive influence hurt consumers in the long run. This is not one of those cases. If a device isn't ready, if a device isn't good as it sits, then it should get a negative review. As reviewers, it has to be binary at the time of review. You don't review things based on what they can do in 6 months. You don't review things based on, the large action model and all the rest of it, stuff that they talked about, is incredibly cool. But if the battery drains, if it's slow, if it's inaccurate, all these things are things that you should be able to make a decision on now. And as a reviewer, we have to sit there and say, you know what, this isn't worth it now. It's binary. Is it worth my $200? Or the other one's even worse. Is it worth my $700? If the answer is no, then that's what the review has to be. And you know what? He was actually pretty fair to the Rabbit thing. He highlighted the good parts. He highlighted what the future could be, but that's not what you base a buying decision on, because that company could go out of business. They could get bored. They could work on their second product. They could kind of say, oh, well, the people who bought the first one, forget it. We're gonna buy the second one. We're really good on the second one. That's stuff that you have to watch out for, and that's stuff that could lead to you not getting your money's worth out of the first one. If you want to be kind of like an angel investor or a seed investor, something like that, or early adopter, and get in there and say, well, okay, I'll invest in it, whatever, that's fine. But for regular consumers who are watching a review of a product, we have to be able to freely say, you know what, this ain't it. And all those people on the internet saying, oh, you can't I put this company down. This is a new product class, and they have to be able to build for the future, and they have to have a chance to whatever improve. No. You don't get that. You don't get that. That's on the company. You don't get to put out a bad product and say, well, we're going to fix it later on, and then be able to and then get away with it, and just everybody gives you a pass. It's not our job to give you a pass at something like that. And, the one thing that really annoyed me is people are like, oh, I would love to have seen MKBHD review the original iPhone. That's one of those things, not to sound like a boomer, but that's one of those things that, like, tell me you're under the age of 30 without telling me you're under the age of 30. Were we disappointed in the first year with the lack of the App Store and all the apps and whatever that we thought we were going to get on the iPhone? Yeah, absolutely. But ahead of that, without the App Store and without the other stuff, the iPhone was already leaps and bounds ahead of what we had already. This is what we had, and this is one of the better ones. People don't remember Windows Mobile before Windows Mobile 7. People don't remember some of those flip phones and those other things, those pay-to-access things, where if you wanted a 2-second video clip or a ringtone, you had to access this proprietary Verizon service that you'd log into and pay for by the kilobit. It was awful before the iPhone. We were in the dark ages, and this was like the iPhone was like landing on the moon. It was a completely different, revolutionary product that was absolutely worth the money. So the experience was fundamentally different from what we already had before. These AI assistants and AI pins aren't that. They're nothing that a $200 smartphone that you carry around couldn't have with some series of apps. It's not a revolutionary anything right now. It could be in the future. That's nice. We're talking about today, what we have to spend our money on today. So while we could acknowledge that these things are really cool and say, well, someday this is going to be awesome, I would love to wear one of those AI pin things on my thing. It'd be great to have a Star Trek communicator badge sitting there that I could just talk to and have an assistant where I'll write emails for me or say, hey, remember, remind me to buy that later or remind me to check on what. That's all really cool stuff, but it's not there yet. And it's not our job to be the seed investors. Here's what I'll tell you where you can get on us as reviewers. If we sit there and we bash the first product and we just sell it off, that's it. We don't deal with the company ever again. And we just write off the tech. That's where you can get us. If we write off the tech and then we don't review the second generation, the third generation, that's where you can kind of sit there and say, wow, they're not being fair. And that would be fair on your part. That would be like, we can't dismiss the technology. We can't dismiss the company. But we have to give a fair assessment of the current product that's in front of our face. And I don't think that's a big ask. And so while I understand that MKBHD has a lot of influence to throw around, that influence can be used for both good and bad. And in the case of saving people money on a substandard product that's out now, being able to be sensational, let me tell you something. On the internet, you have to be sensational with people. And if being sensational about a bad product gets people from spending their $200 or $700, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And you get some of that here sometimes too. I'm not above sensationalism if it keeps you from a bad product or it gets you buying a good product. And that's what I think we miss sometimes. So while MKBHD catches a lot of flack for being MKBHD, and that's the price of success, here it's completely unjustified. Our job is not to baby and coddle and kind of bring these companies to maturity. It's not. Certainly not with our money. So that's something that we have to go back and check. And here's to their credit, to the company's credit, most of them went on Twitter and were pretty receptive to the criticism because they understand. This is part of a greater problem that we've had in the last however many years. Because you've got software companies and products being released that aren't done. And you got kind of this, fix it and post mentality with these games. And instead of getting a complete game or a complete piece of software and then having features added or having vulnerabilities patched later on, which was the initial thought behind it, over-the-air updates and stuff like that, which was awesome. You don't get that anymore. You get incomplete stuff that just gets, throw it out. 4 maps, we'll add other maps later in a game. A software bug or something like that, we'll fix it later. That's the mentality you get. And these products seem like an extension of that mentality. First to market's important, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, guess what? Functionality, when the money's coming out of my pocket, is important as well. I don't get charged $50 now and $150 later for the rabbit thing. I don't get charged $100 now and $600 later for the Humane pin. Right? They're taking all the money now. I want all of at least what they promised up front now. And I don't think that's beyond the realm of a fair ask. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-alicious day.